let's harvest some other craft. So far, we have these items on our toolbox. We added metaphor and personification most recently. So this time, what we will add is probably the most useful rhetorical device that I know about. The Greeks called it enumeratio, and we call it pitchforking. What is it? Well, we call it pitchforking because we're in Texas, and because when you take a handle of a pitchfork and you look at what comes at the end, those tines, there are multiples. It might be 2, it might be 5, but whenever you start listing something within a piece of writing, that's pitchforking. Even if you just break something into 2 or 3 or 4, that's pitchforking. Let's look at the Gettysburg Address. It's chock full of pitchforking. Of course, it's an important document, but if you look at what comes after a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, there are 2 descriptive phrases about this new nation, and we would consider that a pitchfork. There are 2 of them. It's like a list of describers. Look at the Great Civil War. The words great and civil both describe the war. That's a pitchfork too, multiple adjectives. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Fitting and proper. Each one of those is equally important in that phrase. That's a pitchfork. Down below, look at the world will little note nor long remember what we say here. It will little note nor long remember. That's a pitchfork. It's not telling us the world is going to do one thing. It breaks us into 2 things. Those are all pitchforks. So if you were to kernelize this Gettysburg Address, here are the kernel sentences. You can scan right down through them and see what Abraham Lincoln was doing with this speech. Allie Soterdani, who is a 9th grader, used both the structure that we just saw and some of the rhetorical devices here to create her teenage address. You can see that she follows the same structure. You could read it, and you can see there's the same kind of pitchforking here. She even says the world will little note or remember what she said, but it can never forget what she did with her friends. But how do you teach pitchforking to younger children who are maybe too young to read the Gettysburg Address or notice those pitchforks? Well, there's one way that these 2 West Texas teachers told us that they show their 4th graders how to pitchfork. And it's a little more concrete than just showing and then expecting them to try it on their own. They start with one simple sentence like this: I went down the water slide. Then they asked their students, instead of went, what's another word you could say, another verb? That's something that you actually do when you're going down a water slide. And the students give other words like splashed, boomed, plowed. Then the teachers ask the students to add a prepositional phrase. Plowed into the tube, boomed around the curve, splashed through the surface. Finally, they take all of those and combine those phrases into one magnificent sentence. If you're worried that this is going to be a run-on sentence, it's not. It's not. It's going to be one well-developed, especially beautiful sentence. Here's a trick that Charles Dickens does. You start with a before sentence that's quite short, and after you pitchfork, you could add that short sentence with the phrase in short before it, like this. I said this piano was heavy, and here's the pitchfork. Whenever my father, husband, and I gathered around it to move it, we would hoist, grunt, and lift it together, straining and pulling with all our might. In short, it was heavy. So whether you do it this way or another way, The important thing is that your students find pitchforking a useful tool for bringing a lot more depth and variety into a simpler sentence. Another teacher shared with me how she has kids learn pitchforking. They actually draw a pitchfork like this, and they begin with a simple sentence like we were sitting in our car. For each one of those points, they add a phrase, a verb phrase of what else they were doing. And you can see that becomes put together into a massively gorgeous and detailed sentence. Now we add pitchforking. Well, who cares about pitchforking? Look at these high-scoring essays from the STAR test. Clearly, our state's education agency cares about pitchforking. I've been asked this, is there any high-scoring essay that does not use pitchforks? And my answer is, I've not ever seen one. I have never seen a high-scoring essay without pitchforks. So there is a little instructional nudge. If your students are scoring not the highest, but you'd like to see them bump to the highest, pitchforks could be a valuable tool for all of you. But wait, there's more. So many rhetorical devices and so little time. Let's look again at the Gettysburg Address. Do you see in red, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground? Those phrases all start with the same, yes, it's pitchfork. It's a specific kind of pitchfork. Anaphora is whenever phrases begin with the same word. Look at the ending. Of the people, by the people, for the people. Yes, that's a pitchfork. It's a special one called epistrophe, where the final words are the same. We could find a way to draw an icon for those last two, anaphora and epistrophe. And if you were in a class with students, you probably have some students there that could make a little icon for those. But for now, we're just going to consider them pitchforks. With all this craft that you've built a huge bank of craft with lots of room for more. What do you do to weave together a kernel essay with the craft? That's next.